My name is Mark Harper, and I'm 45 years old. This summer, my wife Sarah, our 14-year-old daughter Emily, our 10-year-old son Ben, and I decided to escape the relentless pace of city life by camping in Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, central Illinois. The vast prairies and serene landscapes promised a perfect retreat for our family. Little did we know, we were about to encounter something far more sinister. We arrived at our chosen campsite near the Windy Creek Trail, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the tall grass prairie. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and earth, a stark contrast to the smog and noise of Chicago. Sarah was bustling around the RV, ensuring everything was in place, while Emily and Ben ran ahead, eager to explore their new surroundings. "This place is incredible," Emily exclaimed, her camera hanging around her neck, eyes wide with excitement. Ben nodded, clutching his small backpack. "I can't wait to find some cool bugs and plants." Sarah smiled, her nurturing nature shining through. "Let's set up the RV first. We have a big day ahead of us tomorrow." As we unpacked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This trip was more than just a vacation. It was a chance to reconnect with my family and nature, to leave behind the constant demands of my job as an IT consultant. Night fell quickly in the prairie, and we gathered around the campfire, the flames dancing and casting flickering shadows on our faces. Sarah passed around marshmallows, and we shared stories of past camping trips, laughing and enjoying the peacefulness. After a while, Sarah brought up the local legends. "You know, there are stories about Midewin. They say the prairie is haunted by spirits of those who never left." I chuckled, trying to ease any tension. "Oh, come on, Sarah. Ghost stories to scare the kids." But Emily looked thoughtful. "I read about Wendigos once. They're these evil spirits that roam the wilderness, hungry for souls." Ben shivered, pulling his blanket tighter. "I don't like those stories." I shrugged, though unease settled in my stomach. "It's just folklore, Ben. There's nothing out there." As the fire died down, we retreated to the RV. I double-checked the generator, ensuring everything was secure before settling into my bunk. The first few hours of sleep were peaceful, but around midnight, strange noises began to stir. Soft whispers echoed through the campsite, and the sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel made me sit up, alert. "Sarah, do you hear that?" I whispered, shaking her awake. She stirred, her intuition picking up on my unease. "I hear something, probably just animals," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. I lay back down, trying to convince myself it was true. But as minutes passed, the whispers grew louder, more distinct, as if multiple voices were chanting in an unknown language. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt an inexplicable chill despite the warmth of the fire. Morning brought a heavy fog that rolled in from the prairie, shrouding our campsite in a ghostly veil. The family gathered for breakfast, the unease from the previous night still lingering. "Maybe it was just the wind," I suggested, trying to brush off the night's events. Emily was quieter than usual, her adventurous spirit dampened. "I found something weird yesterday," she said, pulling out a small rock with strange carvings etched into it. Sarah took the rock, examining the symbols. "These look like protective wards," she mused. "Local folklore mentions that these symbols can keep evil spirits at bay." Ben looked up, eyes wide with curiosity. "Do you think they work?" Before I could answer, our generator sputtered and died, leaving us in darkness once again. I groaned, knowing I'd have to spend hours trying to fix it. The equipment malfunction was the first of many difficulties we'd face, adding stress to an already tense situation. "Don't worry, Mark. You're good with this stuff," Sarah reassured me, though I could see her own worry lines deepening. As I worked on the generator, Emily and Ben wandered off to explore the trail, hoping to shake off the night's fear. Sarah and I exchanged a worried glance, but decided to give them some space. The next day, we set out early to hike the Windy Creek Trail. The prairie was beautiful, the tall grass swaying gently in the breeze, and the sun casting a golden hue over everything. But beneath the serene surface, an ominous presence seemed to lurk. Emily led the way, her camera capturing every detail, while Ben followed closely, his imagination running wild with stories of hidden treasures and mystical creatures. Sarah and I kept a watchful eye, both of us on edge from the previous night's eerie experiences. About halfway through the trail, Ben stumbled over something in the underbrush. I bent down to see what he'd found. A small, carved wooden figure resembling a twisted creature with elongated limbs and a menacing face. "These are definitely Wendigo symbols," Sarah said, her voice tense. "They're meant to ward off evil spirits, but it seems like something's trying to break through these protections." Emily knelt beside the figure, her rebellious curiosity evident. "Why would someone leave these here?" Before Sarah or I could answer, the sky darkened and the temperature dropped sharply. A heavy silence enveloped us, broken only by the distant call of a hawk. The once inviting trail now felt claustrophobic, the dense patches of forest closing in around us. "Let's head back," I suggested, sensing that we were venturing into something we didn't fully understand. But Emily shook her head, eyes still glued to the carvings. "There's something more here. I want to see what's next." Reluctantly, I agreed, pushing forward deeper into the trail. The prairie seemed to swallow us whole, the tall grass whispering secrets as we walked. Sarah glanced at me, her cautious nature evident. "Mark, are you sure about this?" I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. "We need to understand what's happening. These symbols, they might be a clue." We continued for what felt like hours, the landscape growing increasingly unfamiliar. Emily's enthusiasm began to wane, replaced by a growing unease. Ben clung to his backpack, his earlier bravado fading. As we reached a clearing, the fog thickened, obscuring our vision. In the center stood a series of stone cairns, each marked with intricate carvings similar to the ones Emily had found. The air was thick with tension, the oppressive silence broken only by the occasional rustle of grass. "This must be a sacred site," Sarah whispered, her intuition guiding her. "We should leave markings to protect ourselves." We began to replicate the symbols around the clearing, drawing them in the dirt with sticks. Emily followed suit, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. Ben helped where he could, though his earlier courage had been replaced by palpable fear. As we finished, the atmosphere shifted. A low hum filled the air, the ground beneath our feet vibrating with an unseen energy. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsating with a strange light that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. "Let's head back," I urged, sensing that our time in the clearing was drawing to an end. But as we turned, the trail behind us seemed to vanish, replaced by an impenetrable wall of tall grass. Panic set in as we realized we were lost, the prairie around us stretching endlessly in every direction. "Stay calm," I told myself, though my heart pounded in my chest. "We need to stick together." We retraced our steps, but the landscape had changed. Landmarks we'd passed earlier were now hidden or distorted, making it impossible to find our way back. The sun began to set, casting long shadows that seemed to move and twist unnaturally. "We need to set up camp again," Sarah decided, her nurturing instincts taking over. "We can fix the generator and figure out our next move in the morning." Reluctantly, we gathered our belongings and found a spot that seemed familiar, though the prairie now felt menacing rather than inviting. As night fell, the oppressive silence returned, broken only by the distant calls of nocturnal animals. That night, back at the RV, the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. Shadows seemed to dance just beyond the campfire's light, taking on shapes that resembled twisted animals and ghostly apparitions. Emily couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as she tried to shake off her fear. "I keep seeing shadows moving outside," she whispered to Ben. Ben, clutching his stuffed animal, nodded. "I heard them too. They sound angry." I knew we couldn't ignore these signs anymore. The malfunctioning generator was the least of our worries. The family needed to stick together and find a way to protect ourselves. Morning brought little relief. The generator was beyond my ability to fix quickly, leaving us reliant on limited power. We decided to explore more of the trail, hoping to find a way out. The prairie, however, seemed to resist our efforts, the landscape shifting and changing as if to confound us. As we ventured deeper, the signs of the supernatural became more pronounced. Ghostly apparitions of prairie settlers appeared and vanished, their faces twisted in eternal torment. The whispers morphed into anguished cries, echoing through the tall grass and filling us with dread. "Mark, look!" Emily pointed to a group of shadowy figures lingering near a ridge. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their presence exuded malice. I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to move, now!" But as we turned to flee, the trail ahead was blocked by a wall of darkness, the spirits forming a barrier that seemed impenetrable. Panic surged as we realized we were trapped, the prairie's dark forces closing in around us. "We need to use the symbols," Sarah urged, her cautious nature pushing her to find a solution. "They're supposed to ward off evil spirits. Maybe if we reinforce them, we can push the spirits back." We quickly gathered sticks and began to redraw the protective wards around us, chanting the phrases Emily had read about from her books. The symbols glowed brighter this time, their power resonating with the spirit's malevolence. The apparitions recoiled, their forms wavering as the symbols took effect. But the spirits were relentless, their cries growing louder and more desperate. The ground beneath us trembled, and the prairie seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Suddenly, Ben let out a terrified scream. "I can't find you!" I spun around to see him missing, his small form swallowed by the darkness. "Ben!" I yelled, my heart racing as I searched frantically for him. Sarah and Emily joined the search, their fear palpable as we ventured into the shadows. The forest loomed around us, the tall grass now a tangled maze that seemed to shift and move with a mind of its own. Every step felt like a descent into madness, the oppressive atmosphere making it hard to breathe. "Mark, over here!" Sarah called out, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of spirits. We rushed towards her, finding Ben standing beside a gnarled tree, his eyes wide with terror. "I saw something," he whispered, pointing to the darkness ahead. "A Wendigo. It tried to take me." Before I could respond, a hulking figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes burning with an unnatural fire. The Wendigo was a grotesque creature, its form a twisted amalgamation of human and beast, with elongated limbs and a face contorted in eternal hunger. "Protect him!" I shouted, grabbing a nearby branch to fend off the creature. Sarah held Emily close, her nurturing instincts pushing her to shield her frightened daughter. The Wendigo lunged at us, its claws outstretched, intent on harming Ben. I swung the branch with all my might, but it seemed to pass through the apparition like smoke. Desperation set in as I realized we needed to act quickly. Remembering the symbols Sarah had found, I recalled that they were meant to ward off evil spirits. "We need to recreate the symbols around the RV," I told Sarah, my mind racing. Despite the chaos, Sarah nodded, her intuition guiding her. Together, we began drawing the protective wards on the ground, chanting the phrases Emily had read about. The Wendigo recoiled, its form wavering as the symbols took effect. Emily, ever the rebel, pulled out her camera and started snapping photos of the apparition. The flashes of light from the camera seemed to disrupt the Wendigo's form, weakening its hold on our reality. With renewed hope, we continued our efforts, the combined power of the protective symbols and the camera's light pushing the Wendigo back. The creature let out a final anguished cry before dissipating into the night, leaving us breathless and shaken. We huddled together, the adrenaline slowly fading as dawn approached. The prairie was quiet once more, the oppressive presence lifted, but not entirely gone. The RV's generator had been irreparably damaged, but we managed to get it running just enough to power our essentials. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, my voice rough. Sarah nodded, her protective nature unwavering. "We're safe now, thanks to you." Emily looked up from her camera, eyes wide with realization. We need to respect these symbols and understand the legends. They're not just stories. Ben, still shaken, managed a weak smile. I'm glad we're together. As we packed up to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that some spirits remained unsettled. In the rearview mirror, Emily caught my eye and pointed towards the edge of the prairie. Faint figures stood watching us, their eyes hollow and sorrowful. We did what we could, I whispered, driving us away from the haunting shadows of Midwin. The journey back to Chicago was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. The experience had bonded us in ways I hadn't anticipated, reinforcing the importance of family and the power of ancient protections. That night, as we settled back into our routines, I couldn't help but reflect on the events in Midwin. The prairie's beauty had been marred by its dark history, a reminder that nature holds both serene and sinister secrets. We had survived, but the memory of those shadowy figures lingered, a testament to the unseen forces that roam the vast landscapes of Illinois. In the days that followed, Emily continued to research the symbols and legends, determined to understand the true nature of the spirits we had encountered. Sarah and I discussed ways to preserve and respect the folklore, ensuring that future visitors would be aware of the prairie's hidden dangers. One evening, as I sat on the porch of our home, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I couldn't help but feel a lingering connection to Midwin. The prairie had tested us, pushing us to our limits and forcing us to confront the unknown. It had also reminded us of the strength we held as a family, united against the darkness that sought to divide us. A few weeks later, Emily approached me with a stack of books and notes. Dad, I think I've figured out more about the symbols. They're part of an old protective ritual, passed down through generations. If we can perform it correctly, maybe we can ensure that the spirits find peace and stop haunting the prairie. Intrigued, I agreed to help her. Together, we delved into the research, uncovering the origins of the symbols and the stories of those who had encountered the Wendigos before us. It became a project that brought our family closer, each of us contributing in our own way. As summer turned to fall, the memories of Midwin began to fade, replaced by the routine of everyday life. Yet the lessons we learned remained etched in our minds. We had faced the supernatural and come out stronger, our bonds fortified by the trials we endured. One crisp autumn evening, Sarah and I took Emily and Ben to a local community center, where she was presenting her research on the Midwin legends. The hall was filled with curious faces, eager to hear about her experiences and the protective rituals she had uncovered. Emily stood confidently at the front, her camera now a symbol of her bravery. Our family's experience in Midwin taught us the importance of respecting the land and understanding the stories that come with it. By preserving these symbols and performing the rituals correctly, we can honor those who came before us and ensure that the prairie remains a place of peace. The audience listened intently, moved by her words and the depth of her research. After the presentation, several people approached her, sharing their own stories and expressing gratitude for the awareness she had raised. As we left the community center, I felt a sense of closure. We had not only survived our ordeal, but had also turned it into something meaningful, something that could help others avoid the same fate. Driving home under a blanket of stars, I glanced at Sarah, her eyes reflecting the same pride and relief I felt. Ben was dozing in the back seat, exhausted but safe, while Emily looked out the window, her mind undoubtedly filled with new ideas and dreams. We did good, I said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. Sarah reached over, squeezing my hand. Yes, we did. And we've got each other, no matter what. As we continued our journey, the prairie receded into the distance, its secrets left behind but never forgotten. The shadows of Midwin had tested us, but in overcoming them, we had discovered the true strength of our family and the enduring power of legends that bind us to the land. My name is Alex Turner, and I'm 30 years old. This happened in the late summer of 2023, deep within the heart of Illinois' Midwin National Tallgrass Prairie. I had always found solace in the embrace of nature, a sanctuary away from the relentless pace of city life. At 30, my life as a wildlife photographer had become a relentless pursuit of the perfect shot, often leaving little room for personal connections. This isolation was both my refuge and my curse. Seeking inspiration and a break from the incessant click of the shutter, I decided to embark on a solo RV trip to Midwin National Tallgrass Prairie, Illinois' largest state park. The vast expanse of grasslands, dotted with wildflowers and bisected by winding trails, promised the perfect backdrop for my next photography project. I arrived on a crisp August morning, the sky a brilliant blue with wisps of white clouds drifting lazily overhead. My RV, a sturdy camper equipped with all the essentials, was parked near Pine Creek Trail, a secluded area known for its serene beauty and abundant wildlife. As I unpacked my gear, the tranquility of the prairie washed over me, a welcome contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. Setting up camp was straightforward. I meticulously arranged my cameras and lenses, ensuring every piece of equipment was within easy reach. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the prairie and igniting the sky with hues of orange and pink. I ventured out for my first hike, eager to capture the golden hour light. The trail was quiet, the only sounds the rustling of grass and the occasional call of a distant bird. Hours passed without incident, and as dusk settled, I returned to my RV, satisfied with the day's work. That night, under a canopy of stars, I settled into my RV, reviewing the photos I'd taken. The images were stunning, majestic elk grazing in the twilight, delicate wildflowers swaying in the breeze, the endless prairie stretching to the horizon. Yet, as I glanced at one particular shot, a chill ran down my spine. In the background, barely visible, was a shadowy figure watching me. I dismissed it as a trick of the light or perhaps a passing animal, convincing myself that it was nothing more than fatigue playing tricks on my mind. The next morning, I awoke to a thick fog blanketing the prairie, obscuring my view and dampening the usual sounds of wildlife. Undeterred, I decided to explore deeper into the park, hoping the mist would lend an ethereal quality to my photographs. As I trekked along an unfamiliar trail, my path suddenly intersected with an old, weathered sign pointing towards Pine Creek Burial Ground. My curiosity piqued. I veered off the main trail, the fog swallowing me whole. The burial ground was a somber place, marked by aged tombstones and overgrown vegetation. The air was heavy, laden with an unspoken sorrow. I felt an inexplicable urge to stay, to capture the haunting beauty of the place. As I set up my camera, the temperature seemed to drop, and an unsettling silence enveloped the area. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, and the oppressive stillness pressed against my chest. I tried to shake off the unease, focusing instead on the task at hand. However, as the afternoon wore on, my equipment began to fail. Batteries died inexplicably, and memory cards became corrupted, erasing hours of work. Frustration gnawed at me, but I pushed forward, determined to salvage the day. It was then that I first heard the whispers, faint, indistinct voices carried on the wind. At first, I thought it was the rustling leaves or distant wildlife, but the whispers grew louder, more coherent, forming words that sent shivers down my spine. Leave. Leave now. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to retreat. Yet a morbid curiosity anchored me in place. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone there. But the burial ground remained deserted. The whispers continued, weaving through the trees and wrapping around me like a cold embrace. Panic began to set in as I realized I was not alone. Determined to regain control, I packed up my gear and made my way back to the RV. The trail seemed different, the fog denser, the path twisting unnaturally. My GPS malfunctioned, displaying erratic coordinates that led me in circles. Every step felt heavier, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on me. The whispers followed, growing into haunting chants that echoed through the mist. As dusk approached once more, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. Its windows were shattered, and the door hung ajar, creaking ominously in the night breeze. Heart pounding, I approached cautiously, the whispers intensifying with each step. Inside, the air was thick with an eerie presence. Shadows danced on the walls, and the whispers morphed into screams of agony and despair. Suddenly, ghostly apparitions of children materialized, their eyes hollow and pleading. They reached out to me, their translucent forms swirling in a chaotic dance around me. Panic surged through me as the spirits closed in, their sorrow and anger palpable. I turned to flee, but the forest seemed endless, the trails twisting in impossible directions. The whispers transformed into blood-curdling screams, and unseen forces pulled me back toward the cabin. Desperate, I broke into a run, the forest closing in around me. The apparitions chased me relentlessly, their spectral forms flickering in and out of existence. Just as I felt I could run no longer, the first light of dawn pierced the trees, and the whispers faded. Exhausted and terrified, I collapsed back at my RV, vowing never to return to the burial ground after dark. The days that followed were a blur of fear and exhaustion. My equipment continued to malfunction, and the once serene prairie now felt oppressive and alive with unseen dangers. I sought refuge in my RV, but the feeling of being watched never left me. Every rustle in the grass, every distant sound, heightened my anxiety. On the fourth night, as I sat reviewing the ruined photographs, I heard a knock at my door. Heart racing, I opened it to find Jess Carter, a park ranger I had met on my first day, standing there with a concerned expression. "Alex, we've been trying to reach you," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "We're concerned about your safety." Before I could respond, Ethan Ramirez, a local historian with a keen interest in the park's folklore, joined us. His presence brought a mix of relief and unease. "We've heard reports of strange occurrences around Pine Creek," he explained, pulling out an old worn map. "There have been disappearances over the years, and some believe the spirits of the restless wanderers still haunt these grounds." Jess nodded gravely. "We think you might have disturbed something ancient and malevolent," Ethan continued, his eyes fixed on the map. "According to local legends, Midowin Prairie is home to Wendigos, spirits of those who succumb to the wilderness's unforgiving nature. They are said to hunger for the living, unable to find peace in death." A shiver ran through me. "So what do we do?" Ethan looked around, his expression serious. "There might be a way to appease them, to honor the spirits and allow them to rest. It involves a ritual that combines respect for their suffering with practical survival tactics." As night fell, we prepared for what felt like an inevitable confrontation. Ethan led us back to the burial ground, where the oppressive atmosphere awaited us. The shadows seemed to move with intent, and the whispers returned, now more insistent and threatening. We began the ritual as Ethan instructed, lighting candles and reciting ancient chants. The air grew thick with tension, and the temperature plummeted. The ground beneath us trembled, and the sky darkened as if the heavens themselves were closing in. Suddenly, a violent storm erupted. Strong winds howled, lightning split the sky, and apparitions surged around us, their eyes burning with malevolent intent. The Wendigos materialized, their shadowy, humanoid forms towering over us. Their elongated limbs and glowing eyes exuded pure malice, and their presence filled us with an overwhelming sense of dread. They advanced, their whispers turning into guttural growls, their hunger for the living palpable. Jess and Ethan stood their ground, continuing the ritual with unwavering determination. I joined in, finding strength in the unity of our efforts. The storm raged around us, the Wendigos relentlessly attacking the RV, their spectral hands clawing at the windows and doors. The oppressive force of their presence made it difficult to breathe, each moment a battle for survival. Realizing that fleeing was futile, I focused on the ritual, channeling my fear into the chants. The candles flickered, but remained lit, their warm glow pushing back the shadows. Slowly, the Wendigos began to recoil, their forms wavering as the ritual took effect. The storm began to subside, the lightning fading, and the apparitions dissipating into the night. As dawn broke, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene calm. Exhausted but alive, we stumbled back to the RV, the first rays of sunlight casting a hopeful light on the desolate prairie. The symbols etched into the trees shimmered and faded, as if bidding us farewell. In the aftermath, the equipment issues ceased, and the prairie returned to its tranquil state. However, the experience left deep psychological scars. My photographs from that night captured unsettling images, shadowy figures lurking in the mist, glowing eyes watching from the darkness. They served as a haunting reminder of the night we danced with spirits under the full moon. As we drove away from Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, the lingering sense of unease remained. The spirits might have been appeased for now, but the legend suggested that the restless souls could return, forever entwined with the land they once called home. The memory of that harrowing experience stayed with me, a testament to the thin veil between the natural and supernatural worlds, and the respect that must be afforded to the mysteries that lie within. Months later, as I exhibit my collection, the haunting images from Midewin captivate and unsettle viewers. Conversations often turn to the story behind the photos, and while I share the truth of that fateful night, I can't help but wonder if the spirits are watching, their presence a silent echo in the vastness of the prairie. The line between reality and the supernatural remains blurred, a testament to the enduring mysteries that nature holds. My name is Marcus Mark Hayes, and I'm 35 years old. This happened in early November, deep within the heart of Starved Rock State Park, northern Illinois. As a wildlife biologist, my life revolves around nature, solitude, and the meticulous study of animal behaviors. After a particularly tumultuous year, marked by personal loss and professional setbacks, I sought refuge in the serene wilderness of Starved Rock. My mission was clear: conduct a year-long study on the migration patterns of deer, focusing on their behaviors as they navigate the park's diverse ecosystems. This solo RV camping trip was the preliminary phase, a time to set up base camp, install motion-activated cameras, and gather initial data before the main research period began. The drive to Starved Rock was a welcome escape from the chaos of the city. As I navigated the winding roads leading into the park, the landscape transformed around me. Urban sprawl gave way to dense forests, rolling hills, and the majestic sandstone bluffs that the park is renowned for. The crisp autumn air was invigorating, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the promise of solitude. Upon arrival, I selected a secluded campsite near the Illinois River, a location I deemed ideal for unobstructed wildlife observation. Setting up the RV was a methodical process, honed by years of fieldwork. I meticulously unpacked my gear, ensuring that the motion-activated cameras were strategically placed to capture the deer's movements without disturbing their natural habitat. The portable generator, essential for powering my equipment and maintaining a comfortable temperature inside the RV, was the final piece of the puzzle. However, as dusk settled, I discovered that the generator was temperamental, struggling to maintain a consistent output. The dropping temperatures signaled the onset of winter, and the unreliable heating system posed a potential problem for the coming nights. I attempted to reassure myself, relying on the RV's insulation and my extra blankets, but a lingering sense of unease took root. That first night, the forest enveloped me in an eerie silence. The usual nocturnal sounds of crickets and rustling leaves were conspicuously absent. Instead, a faint, rhythmic tapping echoed through the darkness, like the distant beating of drums. I tried to dismiss it as a figment of my imagination, or perhaps an unfamiliar animal sound, but the tapping persisted, growing louder and more insistent as the night deepened. The next morning, determined to capture the morning light over the Illinois River, I ventured out with my camera. The tranquility of the sunrise was almost otherworldly, the water mirroring the fiery hues of the sky. As I walked along the riverbank, my attention was drawn to strange, symmetrical markings etched into the trees. They resembled ancient symbols or talismans, meticulously carved with precision. Intrigued, I photographed them, intending to research their significance later. Returning to the RV, I showed Jamie the markings. Jamie Collins, my older sibling, is a 32-year-old software engineer who had insisted on joining me for the trip, despite my initial reluctance. His presence was a source of comfort, a safety net in case of emergencies. He examined the symbols, skeptically. Probably just some local prank or natural formations. "These woods are known for their oddities," he suggested, though I couldn't shake the feeling that the symbols were deliberate, a message or a warning from the forest itself. That evening, as we gathered around the campfire, the rhythmic tapping returned, louder and more pronounced. This time it sounded like deliberate footsteps moving through the underbrush surrounding our campsite. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my eyes darting to the darkness beyond the firelight. Jamie listened intently, his expression grim. "Probably just an animal. The forest is home to all kinds of wildlife." But the sounds didn't stop. Over the next few nights, the tapping evolved. Shadowy figures began to appear at the edge of our vision, fleeting shapes that vanished when we turned to look directly at them. Objects around the campsite moved on their own, campsite chairs displaced, equipment shifted without explanation. The once peaceful environment was becoming increasingly hostile. Researching local legends, I uncovered stories of the wind spirits, ethereal entities believed to be the restless souls of Native American warriors who perished in ancient battles within these woods. According to folklore, these spirits protect the land and can become vengeful if disturbed or disrespected. The more I delved into their history, the more the supernatural occurrences seemed to align with the legends. One night, the temperature plummeted without warning. Frost formed on the RV's windows despite the mild daytime weather. The air grew thick with an oppressive presence, making it difficult to breathe. The shadows seemed to converge on the RV, pressing against the windows as if trying to break through. Jamie and I sat in tense silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. "We need to figure out what they want," Jamie said quietly, his earlier skepticism replaced by a growing concern. The tipping point came on the third night. As we sat by the fire, the shadows outside grew more aggressive. Figures moved closer, their forms becoming more distinct. Tall, humanoid shapes with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. One of them reached toward the RV, its hand passing through the window, leaving a cold, ghostly imprint on the glass. Panic surged through me. Jamie grabbed the satellite phone. "We need to get out of here. Now!" But the generator was still unreliable, and a dense fog had rolled in overnight, making navigation nearly impossible. The roads back were obscured, and the remote location left us with no easy escape. Realizing that leaving wasn't a simple option, we decided to confront the spirits head-on. I remembered the symbols I had photographed and hypothesized that they might be part of a ritual or protective charm. Together, Jamie and I gathered our notes and researched historical references to the wind spirits, uncovering accounts of rituals performed by the original settlers to appease the restless souls. Armed with this knowledge, we prepared to perform the ritual ourselves, hoping to placate the spirits and lift the curse that bound them to the land. The process involved creating a circle of salt, a universal symbol of protection, around the RV, and placing offerings at the center, a lantern to guide lost souls, a bottle of water to symbolize the river, and a loaf of bread as a gesture of peace. As we began the ritual, the atmosphere thickened, the air heavy with anticipation. The shadows swirled around us, their presence both menacing and mournful. Jamie led the incantation, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "Spirits of the wind, hear our plea. We come in peace, seeking harmony. Let our presence honor this land, and grant us passage with your hand." A sudden gust of wind extinguished the lantern, plunging us into darkness. The shadows intensified, their forms now unmistakably hostile. They surged toward us, their eyes burning with a mixture of rage and sorrow. The temperature dropped further, frost now covering the ground within our salt circle. In that moment, a connection formed, a silent understanding of their pain and their desire to protect their sacred land. Dropping the bread, I spoke softly. "We mean no harm. We respect your memory and the land you cherish." Slowly, the shadows began to recede, their aggressive advance softening into a lingering presence. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. The generator hummed back to life, and the fog began to dissipate, revealing a clear path back to civilization. Exhausted but relieved, Jamie and I packed up the RV in the early hours of the morning. The first rays of dawn broke through the trees, illuminating the forest with a gentle light. As we drove away from Starved Rock State Park, the eerie atmosphere faded behind us, leaving only the lingering memories of the encounter. The experience left an indelible mark on both of us. Jamie's skepticism had been shattered, replaced by a newfound respect for the legends and the supernatural forces that inhabit these lands. I, too, was changed, my perspective on solitude and the unseen realms forever altered. Back in the safety of my home, I reviewed the photos I had taken during the trip. Among the serene landscapes were images of shadowy figures and the mysterious symbols etched into the trees. They served as a haunting reminder of the nightmarish reality we had faced and the fragile boundary between the natural and the supernatural. Jamie, meanwhile, began researching more about the wind spirits, driven by a mixture of fear and fascination. Our bond had been tested and strengthened by the shared ordeal. We had confronted not only the malevolent spirits of Starved Rock State Park, but also our own fears and differences. The trip had been a journey into the unknown, a dance with shadows that had nearly consumed us, but ultimately taught us the value of respect, understanding, and the unspoken ties that bind us as siblings. Months later, the wind spirits still lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the thin veil separating our world from the spectral. Occasionally, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure in my peripheral vision, a fleeting echo of that November trip. But the ritual had worked. Peace had been restored to Starved Rock State Park, and so had a semblance of peace within myself. Yet deep in the heart of northern Illinois, some say that on certain nights, when the moon hangs low and the winds carry the whispers of the past, the wind spirits still roam, guardians of their sacred land, ever watchful, ever patient, awaiting the next intruder to trespass upon their haunted grounds. My name is Michael Thompson, and I'm 42 years old. The air was crisp and carried the scent of fallen leaves as I maneuvered our RV onto the gravel parking area of Hennepin Canal Parkway State Park. My wife, Laura, was bustling around the campsite, securing the RV's external steps while our two children, Timmy and Sophie, eagerly explored the surrounding woods. It was late October, and the forest was ablaze with the vibrant hues of autumn, a perfect backdrop for our weekend getaway. This trip was more than just a family vacation. As an IT manager, my days were spent behind screens, dealing with the relentless pace of technology and deadlines. I needed this escape to reconnect with my family and teach my kids some survival skills. Laura, ever the nurturing soul, shared my sentiment. She had a knack for sensing when something was off, a trait that I admired but sometimes found exasperating. Our children, with their boundless energy and curiosity, were the glue that kept us grounded. "Mike, can you get the generator going?" "The lights inside are pretty dim," Laura called out, as she arranged the camping chairs around the fire pit. "On it," I replied, popping the hood of the RV to inspect the generator. To my frustration, it sputtered weakly before falling silent. I gave it a few more tries, but it was clear we were dealing with a malfunction. The dim lights inside the RV cast long shadows that danced eerily as the sun began to set. "We might need to make do without much power tonight," I informed Laura, who nodded understandingly. As dusk turned to night, we gathered around the campfire, the flickering flames providing warmth and a semblance of light. Timmy and Sophie were engrossed in marshmallow roasting, their laughter mingling with the crackling of the fire. Laura began sharing stories of her childhood camping trips, her voice soft and soothing. "Did I ever tell you about the time I saw ghostly children wandering these very woods?" Laura asked, her eyes twinkling with a mix of amusement and mystery. "Ghosts?" Timmy's eyes widened with excitement. Laura chuckled. "Just old tales, sweetie. The forest has its share of legends." We enjoyed the evening's serenity until the clock struck midnight. A chill swept through the campsite, and the comforting sounds of the night were pierced by strange noises, branches snapping, distant whispers, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps encircling our campsite. Timmy, unable to contain his curiosity, whispered, "Did you guys hear that?" Laura frowned, her intuition kicking in. "It's probably just animals, Timmy. Let's not worry." But as the minutes ticked by, the noises grew louder and more distinct. Timmy's earlier excitement had waned, replaced by unease. Sophie clung to Laura, her small frame shivering. "Mommy, I saw something," Sophie mumbled, her voice trembling. Laura leaned in, trying to catch the glimpse Sophie was referring to. "What did you see, sweetheart?" "A shadowy figure, watching us from the trees," Sophie replied, her eyes darting towards the dense foliage surrounding our campsite. I grabbed my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness as I scanned the perimeter. Nothing, just the swaying trees and the blanket of night. Yet the unsettling feeling remained, gnawing at the edges of my mind. "Maybe it's just our imagination," I suggested, though my unease mirrored Laura's. But Timmy wasn't convinced. "No, Dad, I saw them too. Tall, slender shapes with glowing eyes." My heart raced. The local legends Laura had mentioned suddenly felt all too real. Hennepin Canal Parkway had its share of ghost stories, tales of lost children and restless spirits lingering in the dense woods. I tried to rationalize, but the evidence before me was hard to ignore. "All right, let's stay calm and keep an eye out," I instructed, trying to mask the tension in my voice. The temperature seemed to drop further, our breaths visible in the cold night air. The oppressive silence was broken by a low chanting that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. The shadows around us began to shift, taking on more defined, grotesque shapes. Ghostly apparitions of children materialized, their faces pale and eyes hollow. Sophie started crying, pulling away from Laura's comforting embrace. "Please help us." The apparitions moved closer, their movements unnaturally fluid, their presence suffocating. I could feel an invisible force pressing against us, heightening our fears and amplifying the darkness that enveloped our campsite. "Stay together," I ordered, trying to keep my family anchored amidst the chaos. Laura, ever the beacon of strength, reached for my hand. "We need to perform the protective ritual," she whispered, recalling the folklore she'd heard about warding off spirits. "Salt and prayers can keep them at bay." I nodded, quickly grabbing the container of salt from the RV. Together, we began sprinkling it around the perimeter of our RV, the grains glistening under the flickering firelight. Laura started reciting a prayer, her voice steady despite the fear etched on her face. The apparitions hesitated, their ethereal forms wavering as the ritual took effect. The chanting grew louder, more frantic, as if the spirits were battling against the protective barrier we were erecting. The oppressive force began to lift, the air clearing slightly as the spirits retreated. "Now we need to leave," I decided, knowing that staying any longer would only invite more danger. "Pack up quickly, and let's get out of here." As we hurriedly gathered our belongings, the generator sputtered back to life, providing a flicker of hope amidst the lingering darkness. We could feel the spirits' anger as they attempted one last surge to trap us, causing objects inside the RV to move on their own. lanterns swinging violently, doors slamming shut, and the generator sparking erratically. With Laura leading the way, we made a run for the trailhead. The dense forest seemed to conspire against us, thick fog descending upon the path and reducing our visibility to mere feet. Every step felt like wading through a nightmare, the sounds of unseen entities whispering and screaming around us. Timmy stumbled, tripping over a root concealed beneath the fallen leaves. I reached out, pulling him to his feet, while Sophie clung to Laura, her eyes wide with terror. "We have to keep moving," I urged, my own legs burning with exhaustion. The trail seemed endless, each bend in the path offering no promise of escape. The spirits' whispers grew louder, their pleas for help intertwining with screams of anguish. It was as if the forest itself was alive, intent on keeping us trapped within its haunted embrace. Just as hope began to wane, the first light of dawn pierced through the canopy, the golden rays dispelling the lingering shadows. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the fog began to thin, revealing the familiar trailhead. With a final burst of energy, we broke free from the forest's grip, the RV now fully operational as the supernatural presence had lifted. We collapsed onto the gravel, breathless and trembling, but safe. As we drove away from Hennepin Canal Parkway State Park, the memory of that night lingered like a haunting echo. The bond between us had strengthened, forged in the crucible of fear and survival. Yet, the subtle signs of the supernatural remained. A distant whisper carried by the wind, a fleeting shadow darting across our vision, reminding us that not all spirits had been banished. Back home, life gradually returned to normal. Timmy became fascinated with ghost stories, eager to understand the mysteries of the supernatural. Sophie developed a heightened sense of caution, always the first to notice when something was amiss. Laura and I found solace in each other's resilience, our shared experience deepening our connection. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the shadows danced just right, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits of Hennepin Forest were still watching, their whispers a reminder of the night we faced the unknown together.